You gotta calm down. You gotta calm down.
Back in 2013, I fell in love. Not with a person, but with a car. Driving by my local Subaru dealership, I managed to see one of the new Subaru BRZs, and I thought it was the most beautiful car ever made. A gateway drug, an addiction, and I used it to travel everywhere, explore my region, and go to track days and learn to become a better driver. I knew from that day forward that I would always have a fun driver's car in my life, and that there was nothing that could take that away from me. Fast forward a couple of years, and I was fortunate enough to be able to own both my 944 and a Boxster 981 edition. But I didn't need to have both of them. They were both entry-level Porsche sports cars, and you add to that we had a puppy coming along the way, and a 90-pound golden retriever doesn't fit in the front seat of a Boxster, along with my wife. Additionally, the Boxster was a great car, but it didn't make a very good long-distance driver, so I needed to find something that was comfortable, but also something that I could still enjoy driving on a day-to-day basis. Essentially, I had to calm down. But I didn't have to calm down that hard. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to introduce you to my other car. This is my 2015 Porsche Macan Turbo, so top trim car at the time. And I want to ask a question, once again, which is, who is this car for? Because on paper, this thing does not make any sense at all. It's supposed to be an SUV, or a crossover, which is just a watered-down SUV, which means it's not very good at its job. I should start by saying that when this car was developed, it was supposed to be based off of the Cayman, I believe, whereas the Cayenne was based off of the 911. So this was supposed to be a smaller, more agile variant. But on its face, and just looking at the statistics and having owned this car for a couple of years, it's inherently compromised in a couple of places that make it good at being a sports car. It makes it not a very good SUV, so it's sort of stuck in the middle here, and I kind of want to talk about it. I want to explore what I think this car is, who it's meant for, and why I still own it after 2 years. Let's start with that first question, whether or not it's a sports car. Like I said, I believe that it was based off of the Cayman, and then turned into a upsized or larger version of that, but to call this thing a sports car, it's just not. For one thing, it has 4 doors, and that's by definition not a sports car. Secondly, it's too heavy. Like in all of the other cars that I have that are lightweight sports cars, they're very, very quick because they're not very heavy. They don't usually have a huge amount of power. This has a ton of power, a ton of stopping power, but it's also heavy, and you can feel it especially when it's loaded up. The power of this comes from a 3.6 liter V6 with twin turbos, making about 400 horsepower and 406 foot-pounds of torque. This is mated to a 7-speed PDK, which puts the power down really, really well. It sort of becomes a swell of power as you're driving along the highway, which is really, really good for grand touring, but not so much for spirited backroad driving. Now, by today's standards, that seems kind of pedestrian. This is 8 years old now, and that was a lot of power back then, and it kind of set the stage for the power wars that we're seeing these days with all these SUVs going 1,000,000 miles an hour, you know, with 800, 900, 1,000 horsepower. So that's S for SUV out of the way. This isn't really a sports car, but what else is this car supposed to be good at? The second part of SUV is utility. And this is where we start to get into some of the other problems with why this car is compromised, starting with the back seats. These back seats are pretty good if you have a person that has no legs or maybe a dog like we use for ours, but this is me sitting behind myself. As you can see, I'm just under 6 feet, and this is entirely uncomfortable for an adult human being to sort of be in the back. So I don't really think that it's that great for carrying actual people around, which is why I think it's good for, you know, people who have maybe small children or dogs, but that's pretty much it. One advantage of the back seat is that you get to actually use the panoramic view in this particular car, and it's absolutely beautiful back here. But as the driver and a person who is, you know, grown legs, I'm never going to be able to use it. The dog seems to appreciate it though. Moving further back to the trunk, you can see that we have a problem stayed away. A lot of automotive manufacturers lately have been releasing cars that have this big slice taken out of the top of it to give it sort of this fastback look. The problem is that this cuts off a lot of storage space you would have in the trunk. And this is a problem because if you stack stuff high or you have unusually sized stuff, the motor will detect that there's something in the way and it'll lose its mind and it can't actually close. This is exacerbated by the presence of this privacy cover that exists in the trunk that just takes up so much more space, and it limits what you can actually put in the car. More often than not, this cover just sits in the corner of my garage collecting dust, and I never use it. While we're outside of the car, let's briefly touch on the aesthetics of this vehicle. Now, I honestly don't think there's much to write home about here because it's really hard to stand out from the crowd with all of the other crossovers, all of the other SUVs that sort of flood the market. It's really difficult to try to stand out from the crowd right now. All of the cars pretty much look the same. All of the crossovers look the same. There is truly nothing new under the sun. And even companies like Porsche and Lotus and Ferrari are stuck making these mindlessly dull looking cars. But I will say that Porsche did a really good job of at least attempting to look somewhat sporty and different. And when I do see this car standing in the parking lot, it does seem to look a little different from everything else. I'm especially fond of the way it looks from the back with the tail lights lit up, because it looks kind of like Darth Vader with the way that this car is black. It looks like he's got a pair of glowing red eyes coming out from underneath the helmet, especially at night. Luke, I am your father. So it's not very sporty. It's not going to win any beauty pageants. Have I made a mistake here? Is this car something that I should trade in? Something that I should give up on? Well, there's a problem with all of that. Here's the thing though. This car is absolutely brilliant. Sure, it may not be as nimble as some of the sports cars that I have, but you know, what is these days? It doesn't carry its weight around like a wide receiver or running back. It carries it around like a linebacker. It has so much confidence in these corners that it is absolutely remarkable to me that the Porsche engineers were able to take something that should be inherently flawed and turn it into something this amazing. Those guys are not engineers. They're wizards. It's super comfortable in here. It's got these 18-way adjustable seats, heated and cooled. It's quiet in here. The build quality is exceptional, and it just makes it so that way anytime you get into this car and you have to go for long distances, it doesn't really feel like it's that much of a problem. And it makes sense that all of this would come at such a premium because when Porsche sold this, I saw the original sticker, it went for something like $100,000. I love how there's a button for absolutely everything in this environment, or in this car. It's not like I don't have to go through a touchscreen full of information, an iPad or something like that. This is from a generation of cars where Porsche put buttons in for absolutely everything. It takes a little while to get used to finding them, but once you do, you know exactly which button you're going to push to get to whatever option it is that you want. And there's things in here that I'm probably never going to use, but I'm glad I have them. Maybe you need to go a little lower to the ground so that way your tiny wife can get in and out of the car. Maybe you're about to go down a slope hauling a trailer, and that's what you need this button for. This off-road button came in use more than one occasion whenever I find myself down a deserted back road, or once my wife and I were traveling back with the dog from the top of a snowy mountain on Christmas Day, and we were on roads that hadn't been plowed yet on bald summer tires. This car with the off-road button on turned it into a 50-50 weight distribution, making it more of an off-road car than I thought would have been possible. It was incredibly proficient.
One nice little detail that I like is that the clock in the center is an homage to the old Porsche design watches from the 70s. Even my complaints earlier about the fact that there's not a lot of storage space kind of fall away when you realize that my previous cars were sports cars and a run to Home Depot was a nightmare. The storage and the stuff that I can fit into this car now are actually incredible compared to what I was able to do before.
So here we come back to the crux of the question. Who is this car for? If you want a sports car, you should go and buy a Cayman. If you want a Grand Tour SUV, you should go buy a Cayenne. Why is this car so awesome, so brilliant to drive, and is so useful, just comfortable? It's almost perfect for me, a person with no kids and a dog.
But by driving this car, does that mean that I'm missing out on something? That I'm not seeing the best Porsche has to offer, whether it's on the sports car side with the 911 or a Cayman, or on the Grand Tourist side with the Cayenne? Am I doing something that's a jack of all trades and a master of none? That sounds like a recipe for mediocrity, and I can't stand not knowing.
I don't get it. What am I missing out on? Maybe I'm not thinking about this in the right way. Maybe instead of this supposing to be a Cayenne that's just smaller, or a Cayman that's just larger, maybe this is something else altogether. No, I've been comparing it to the wrong car. Look at this, 4 doors, all-wheel drive, a hatch that opens up and down like this, with storage space, not a huge amount, but still enough that's practical, and gobs of power. No, this isn't a sports car. This isn't an SUV. This is a hot hatch. This is a WRX. This is a Golf, but it's just a little bigger. Everything else has gotten bigger over the course of the last 10, 15 years. Why not hot hatches? I'm even more convinced now than I was before. They're even the same color. Here they are from the front, from the side. They both even have these hatches like I talked about in the past. They both have parcel shelf covers for privacy, and these spoilers here. I think I finally figured it out, you guys. I think I know who this is for. The Porsche Macan is for people who are driving around in Subarus and Volkswagens back in their 20s and early 30s and needed to elevate into something else, wanted to get something nicer and better as they grew in success. I didn't need to calm down at all, and I have the car that matches my personality now, who it is that I shifted into as an adult. This car isn't compromised. It's specifically targeted at a certain group of people. They just don't call it that. They don't call it a hot hatch. And maybe that's the smartest thing they've done, because maybe they wouldn't sell if people did. And here's the other thing too, is that these are getting cheap. Like, I don't know if I'm exactly upside down in this based on the value and the mileage, but these cars are incredible and they're becoming less and less expensive by the month. By the time I have this thing paid off, I don't know if it's going to be worth trading in or selling it. But if it is a big hatchback, then here's a really good idea. All-wheel drive, 400 horsepower. Maybe that's about the limit of what a good rally car could actually hold on to with the right tires on gravel. Maybe in a couple of years, this won't be just a Macan Turbo anymore. maybe I'll build it into a rally car. Stay tuned for that. We'll see how that turns out. Thank you all so much for watching. Hey, if you're still with me all the way through the credits, I want to thank you for that. I've been really enjoying making these videos. They're not really reviews. I think they're more like video essays about certain aspects of the cars that I own. And if you happen to be in the Pacific Northwest and you have an interesting car that you'd like me to take a look at and compose a similar video for, go ahead and reach out to me in the comments or email me, alliedcam1@gmail.com. Thanks so much. I really do enjoy making these videos, and your feedback has been excellent. So I'd love to get my hands on other more interesting automobiles to take down my back roads and to sort of dig into them. But thanks again. I'll see you next time.